This week in post, Unscripted, Uncut. It's a live edit. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to do a live edit. Live is in air quotes. I'm not streaming this live, but what I'm doing here is taking a photo from my library I've never worked on before, press record, I start processing it, and I kind of verbalize what I'm thinking about as I'm going through the image. And at the end of it, we'll see what we come up with. It may be a great photo, it may be a good photo, it may be a bad photo, but we're going to find out. And there may be mistakes and switchbacks and wrong turns along the way. And that's kind of where the learning all happens. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this photo is the one I'm going to work on today. It's from this oak grove that I visited. I took you there earlier this week on In the Field. And so a quick assessment of the image. This has got a lot of dynamic range. You know, the shadowy areas of the tree are very deep. There's a lot of highlight detail that's quite honestly is going to be blown out. And sweeping around the border of it, I think this area here is a little bit distracting on the left edge. Otherwise, what I want to do with this is I certainly want the tree to be prominent. So I want that to have open that up a little bit, have a little more of that detail and that bark show up. And for the rest of the scene, I'm thinking about kind of giving it a bit of a glowy type feel. So let the foliage be a little soft, much more vibrant and green. So I'm already thinking about some of the filters in ON1 Photo for that particular part of the processing. But let's start with the basics here in Lightroom. All right, so basics. Exposure overall is good. Quick on the J key. Yeah, as expected. Highlights are a little bit blown. That's okay, and it's not a very important detail out there. So I'm not going to touch the exposure because that's pretty well bounded. Let's pull back the whites a tiny bit and the highlights a little bit, and that helps. We can actually already see that difference here as well as here. And then let's open up the shadows some. Maybe let's push it really far. That's probably too much. I don't want to open up that much. I can do something with a localized adjustment to get the tree a little more. I'm going to press the R key and do a crop just to pull in that distracting area. I'm going to maintain my ratio on this. Let's lock that in. Because there's not particularly anything special about the edges of the scene here. Let's go ahead and hit that. All right. So, next thing to do, let's add some clarity. That's brightening things up pretty well. And let's do some vibrance. Let's start with just some color. A little more saturation there too. Okay, still want some more detail in the tree, and I really want to tone down that sky. I'm jumping around quickly here though. Let's keep on with color for just a minute. Yellows. Let's shift that a little more toward green, and add a little more green saturation, and so we can see before and after. Some of the greens that are more like yellows, which is true for a lot of greens, those are shifting. Sorry, true for a lot of greens? Yeah, greens are more like yellow. I am saying the right thing. Shifting that yellow hue toward green will really kind of give your foliage a nice pop there. I'm going to grab now a graduated filter. Actually, that's exactly what I want. Burn, darken. We're going to take that down off the top. And I don't want to affect the shadows. I only want to affect the top, this blue sky area. So, before, after, and we'll temper that. I'm going to press the O key to turn on a range mask, luminance, and we'll start protecting those shadows. And let's cut that edge a little bit more. So we're really just hitting those upper leaves and trees. And that's better. O key turned off. Let's see before and after on that. Before and after. And maybe even take a little bit extra saturation in there. And maybe even slightly cool it, just to give that sky a little bit more blue. All right, that's pretty good. What else do we need to do with this image tonally? The tree feels still dark, and this area here still feels very bright. Let's see about targeting those pieces. Let's start with the smaller of the two, this area over here. So I'll use a radial filter, kind of drop that into this area, open that up a bit, And once again, O key to turn on the mask. I only want to target the brighter areas. So again, we're going to prevent the shadows from being affected here. Let's turn that down some. Maybe right around there. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be reasonable. And then also we can take the highlights down. That's much better. Let's see a before and after on that. Before and after. Good. Okay. Now the next thing, I'm going to duplicate, I should say, this adjustment and toss it over on this side right over here. And that same thing on this edge where there's this other bright patch of foliage, and see before and after. Cool. All right, now the tree itself, I'm thinking about, since I want to bring this into ON1 for some of the glow type look and soften up that foliage, I think I'm going to also try to address the tree itself there as well. The masking tools are stronger, and I can dial those in better with luminosity masks, so I'm going to give that a try. So let's get this over into ON1 Photo. So let's close out that tool, and I'm going to right click on it and say Edit In, and I'm going to send this over into ON1 Effects. All right, so in ON1 Photo, and let's deal with this tree. Let's work on this. So I will add, I want contrast, I want punch on the tree. I only want it on the tree. So we'll start with dynamic contrast and even slightly open up the shadows. But now let's get into this masking. I'm going to start with a luminosity mask. And then I'm going to view that mask. So everything that's dark is not getting the contrast, and everything is bright is getting the contrast. It's the opposite of what I want. I'll invert that. And so now that tree is very bright white. That's great. Now let's start playing with the levels. So as I dial the levels around, I can shift where that pivot point from bright to dark happens. And then we'll close the window down, so we're really starting to target in just this tree. Okay, that's pretty good to start with. Let's brighten that up there. I got to do some brush work here. And let's see, will it be more straightforward to brush the tree, or will it be more straightforward to brush away the foliage now that I'm paying attention to this? Let's try doing our brushing away. Opacity, we'll turn on the perfect brush. We'll make the brush kind of big and see about getting in through here. This won't have to be, as much as I'm using the perfect brush, the mask doesn't need to be perfect, but I want it to be pretty darn close. So I'm going to work around the edges of the major branches of that tree on either side with the perfect brush turned on. And then once I've got the tree relatively isolated, I can turn off the edge detection and the masking will go much faster. Now, I am being sloppy, and I'm kind of purposely doing that, partially because, you know, watching me mask around a tree is probably about as fun as watching paint dry. But also, the mask doesn't need to be exactly perfect. I'm going to paint in here. I'm going to do Shift X, paint in on the tree here, and if you missed it, Shift X is new with 2018.5. That shortcut key changed, and there's reasons for that. I actually did a video about it if you want to see it. So now I'm well shifted gears here. I'm now painting in on the tree. And, you know, looking in retrospect, this probably would have been easier to do it this way. So since I'm halfway down this path already, I'm just going to continue it, and I'll still do the cleanup here. So this masking job is going to take a little bit longer than it really should have. If I had started off with just painting in on the tree branches, it probably would have been a quicker job. One more here. So this guy here comes through here, right through there, and that piece there. I'm going to press the O key again. I think this is, yeah, there's a little bit in there. So I'm just going to use the visual feedback I have from the screen there. All right, Shift X again, And now we'll kind of get in the spaces around those edges. Good. And again, I'm working on the edges, kind of where the foliage that I don't want to have additional contrast or shadow openings, and isolating that from what I do. Then I can turn off the edge detection, and that will make the brush work a whole lot faster. So getting pretty close here, and then kind of something like that down at the bottom. All right, turn off the edge detection, make that brush bigger, and then we can get rid of everything else in much shorter order. So like that, shorter order, in unintentional rhyme, sometimes that happens. Okay, we'll sweep up through here, and this part I'll just be kind of a little careful. I didn't isolate this area, but that's gonna be pretty good. Bigger brush, take care of that. Okay. You're getting the idea here. Going as fast as I can, believe me folks. I know this isn't the exciting part, but this is what we get when we have a quote-unquote live edit. This is what takes time, and so we spend the time doing it. All right, that's almost done. Shrink that brush down, get over in here, and then finally this part up here. I feel like I missed something on the right-hand side, so we'll get that taken care of in just a moment. Get through that. Yeah, this part here, that looks a little sloppy. Let's turn off the O key, and I'm just going to eyeball it on that part. All right, so now let's take a look here, before and after. So we're getting the pop on that tree. Let's now take a look at what can we do with this tree here. We've got the detail on there. I think what I'm going to do is copy that mask, local adjustment, and let's paste the mask down. And instead of darkening it, we're going to brighten it up a little bit. That's too much, of course. Let's maybe do a quarter stop and open the shadows up just a little bit, and let's see a before and after on that. Okay, that's still a little bit too bright. Let's tone that back. Maybe just a 0.1, just a little nudge. So before and after. Okay, that's better. All right, so we're getting some detail in the tree. I'm going to do a quick sanity check here. This is before we did anything in On1, and this is after. All right, the tree's getting a little more punch. Now let's look at this foliage. Back over to the overall settings, and I want to add in a type of glow. So I'm going to press the glow here, and let's see what we have in our styles. There's Deep Forest, which is going to be really heavy. Orton Clean is usually pretty good. That's pretty dark. Let's start with Deep Forest, but we're going to back off that opacity quite a bit there. And we're going to use that mask again. I'm going to paste that mask down. I'm going to invert that mask. So now I'm protecting the tree, and I'm giving the scene here a little bit of glow. So let's see, before and after. Not bad. I want to feather that mask a little bit, get a little more softness around the edges of that tree. Let's see, before and after. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that. That's all right. Let's do a big before and after. This is before any changes in On1. This is after. Perhaps a little more punch on that tree. Let's try the tone enhancer, the good old standby the tone enhancer. I'm going to paste that same mask down. We're just really targeting the tree with all of this. And let's pop clarity on that. Not much of a difference. Let's pop detail. A little bit more. Contrast. Maybe the highlights. I'm curious about bringing out some of the fingers in that bark. Do before and after on tone enhancer. Wow, that was subtle. That's not much going on there at all. One more time on that before and after. There's a little more of a punch there. It's bringing those things out. All right. This is about as far as I think this photo is going to go. There's just, It's all right. This is not going to end up being a stellar shot. There's just too much distractions here, and even if I spent the time to do that mask incredibly detailed, I don't think that's gonna help. I will visit that local adjustment one more time just to see if I brighten the tree up, what's that gonna look like. Let's push it too far. Let's bring it back. And then somewhere in between, maybe a little extra on that. I will finish this off though with a vignette. Let's add the vignette. And let's start with strong. And I'm going to bias the center a little bit downwards. So let's take feather all the way down so we can see where this is. And then as I click and drag, you can see that the vignette moves around. Let's bias this downward toward the floor of this grove. And then we'll pump the feather back up to there. So before the vignette, and then after, drawing the eye downward into here, and these knots and so forth in this tree. Actually, maybe now let's just do one more. Let's do one more local adjustment. We'll add a layer. I'm going to choose lighten, low opacity. So fundamentally, I'm kind of doing an exposure of 1, but then opacity of 1/4. So it's kind of like just doing a 0.25 exposure. I got my brush set. Opacity is high for the brush. Let's make the feather nice, and I'm just kind of just this little area here, right down here where there's this interesting knots and twists in the tree, just to draw the eye's attention there a little bit more. Before and after, maybe even tone that exposure back just a touch. Before and after. All right, I think I'm going to call that one done. So here is what we did in Lightroom, and then we brought it in. So did some work there. So yeah, it certainly does change the dynamic of the photo. I think it's a little stronger after having done the work on the tree and giving that bit of glow to the foliage. Yeah, so it's an okay photo, and sometimes that's what we get when we do a live edit. Let's take one more look at the big sequence here that we did. So here is the photo straight out of camera, and this just has the minor crop at that right-hand edge. These are the adjustments done in Lightroom, so balancing out the exposure, dealing with some of the hot spots and tonality, like this bright area here and the bright area on the left-hand edge. And this is the final image from the work done in ON1 Photo RAW. And even now, as I look at this final image, I think I want to go back and darken that tree down a little bit. I think it got a little bit bright. I like some of that texture of that bark, but it feels a little unnatural. So I'll probably revisit this photo, tinker around with that brightness and shadowy areas on the tree trunk itself to really deepen those shadows back in and give it that fuller, richer feel that it had in really what it felt like on scene. And for a tip of the week, I think it's leveraging your adjustments. You saw me do that in 2 places. In Lightroom, I duplicated one of the radial filters. Instead of dialing in all the settings again, I had settings I liked, copied it, dropped it over onto another area of the scene. Similarly, in ON1 Photo, copying and pasting that mask and just leveraging the mask work that I'd done in one adjustment to a variety of adjustments throughout the photo. And that's going to do it for this live edit. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, let me know somehow. You got questions or you got thoughts about, hey, I would have tried this, or did you think about doing that? Well, I maybe I didn't think about it, because if I did, you would have heard me say something. But I'm always curious to hear what is going through your mind when you're watching these. And I'd love to find out other experiments to try, and I keep those in mind for future photos. So until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Happy shooting.